Have you ever wondered how our world became what it is today? Let's embark on a journey back to the 15th century, an era marked by curiosity, exploration, and ambition. The 15th century witnessed the dawn of colonialism and imperialism, an epoch that would redefine the world's geography and cultural landscape. European powers, including Spain, Portugal, France, and Britain, spearheaded this movement. Driven by a thirst for new trade routes and resources, they set sail, venturing into uncharted territories. The explorations undertaken by these nations were not merely voyages of discovery, they were strategic moves in a grand game of power and influence. As their ships anchored on distant shores, these European powers claimed lands far from their borders, planting their flags and declaring these regions as their colonies. As the centuries rolled on, these colonies proliferated, stretching from the Americas in the west to Africa and Asia in the east. The world was no longer a vast, unknown expanse, but rather a chessboard, with nations maneuvering for control over regions rich in resources and strategic advantage. The impact of this colonial expansion was profound, forever altering the regions that fell under colonial rule. The indigenous cultures, social structures, and economies of these colonized lands were reshaped, often forcibly, to serve the interests of their European overlords. And yet, these colonies were not merely passive recipients of European domination. They were active participants in this global drama, shaping and being shaped by the forces of colonialism and imperialism in a complex dance of power, resistance, and adaptation. The legacy of this era is still evident in the 21st century, from the borders of nations to the languages we speak and the cultures we identify with. The world as we know it today is, in many ways, a product of this tumultuous period in history. But what was the driving force behind colonialism and imperialism? What propelled these European powers to venture into the unknown and claim distant lands as their own? Stay with us as we delve deeper into the motivations and mechanisms of this transformative era. It was the desire for wealth, resources, and dominance that fueled this era. The European powers, having discovered lands teeming with untapped resources, saw an irresistible opportunity for economic advancement. These lands held the promises of gold, silver, and a plethora of other valuable commodities. Yet it wasn't just about precious metals and spices. The fertile lands were perfect for agriculture. Crops, such as sugar, tobacco, and cotton, could be grown in abundance, further adding to the wealth of the colonizers. Yet the wealth didn't just magically appear. It had to be extracted, processed, and transported. This is where the local people came in. The colonizers saw in them a source of cheap labor. In their eyes, the locals were tools to be used for the economic growth of their home countries. The local populations were often forced into labor under harsh conditions. Their sweat and toil went into the establishment of plantations, mines, and other industries that fed the economic machine of the colonial powers. The colonizers, in their pursuit of wealth, exploited both the natural resources and the people of these lands. Yet, the exploitation didn't stop at the physical level. The colonizers also manipulated local politics and societies to their advantage. They established systems that ensured their economic interests were protected above all else. The local rulers were often coerced or bribed into serving the interests of the colonizers, further deepening the economic exploitation. But colonization wasn't just about economic gain, it was also about power and control. The colonizers established systems of governance that ensured they retained control over the colonies. They imposed their laws, their culture, and their way of life on the colonized people, further asserting their dominance. In this era of colonialism and imperialism, the pursuit of wealth and resources sparked a global power struggle that left deep scars on the colonized regions. Yet these regions were not merely passive victims. They were active participants in their own history, often resisting and challenging the colonizers in various ways. But that's a story for another scene. European powers also aimed to spread their culture, language, and religion. This was more than a mere side effect of colonization. It was a conscious and deliberate strategy. As they established their rule, European colonizers imposed their way of life on the indigenous populations. They introduced their languages, legal systems, and social norms, often devaluing and suppressing local customs and traditions. This process, known as cultural assimilation, profoundly altered the cultural landscape of the colonized regions. It was a tool of control, a means to create a sense of superiority and to legitimize their rule. But this cultural imposition came at a cost. Local cultures were eroded, languages were lost, and identities were reshaped. The echoes of this cultural assimilation reverberate to this day, evident in the languages spoken, the religions practiced, and the societal norms followed in these regions. However, colonialism wasn't met without resistance. Colonized people fought fiercely for their independence. This era was marked by an intense struggle against the chains of colonial rule. The seeds of resistance were sown deep within the hearts of the oppressed, giving rise to powerful revolutions and uprisings. From the indigenous tribes of the Americas, resisting the Spanish invaders, to the Indian Rebellion of 1857 against British rule, the colonized world was ablaze with the fires of rebellion. These struggles were not in vain. They ignited the birth of nationalist movements across the globe. Leaders emerged, uniting their people under the flag of freedom, inspiring them to reclaim their lands from the grip of imperial powers. This was a time of change, a time of struggle, a time of resistance. As the world evolved, so did attitudes toward colonialism. This period of resistance marked a turning point, setting the stage for the waves of decolonization that would soon sweep across the world. The aftermath of World War II marked the beginning of a wave of decolonization. As the smoke cleared from the battlefields of Europe and Asia, the world began to shift its perspective. The empires that had once held vast territories found themselves weakened and challenged by the very regions they had colonized. From Africa to Asia and the Americas, the colonized people began to rally for their right to self-governance. This struggle was not without its difficulties. It was a process filled with political upheaval, social unrest, and even armed conflict. But the desire for freedom and autonomy proved to be an unstoppable force. Decolonization was a complex, multifaceted process, and it didn't happen overnight. But bit by bit, former colonies began to gain their independence, shedding the yoke of their colonial pasts. Today, we can see the lasting impact of colonialism and imperialism. While the echoes of this era still resonate, they serve as a powerful reminder of the enduring human spirit and the quest for self-determination. The social, political, and economic structures of these once colonized countries bear the scars of their past. Colonialism and imperialism left indelible marks on these societies, shaping them in ways that continue to resonate today. In many instances, the boundaries drawn by colonizers have given rise to distinct national identities, while also sowing seeds of conflict and division. In the realm of politics, the structures and systems established by European powers still hold sway. Many of the colonized nations adopted the political frameworks of their colonizers, leading to both the spread of democracy and, in some cases, the entrenchment of autocratic rule. Economically, the exploitation of resources during the colonial era has resulted in an enduring imbalance. Countries rich in natural resources found themselves at the mercy of their colonizers' greed, leading to economic dependency that persists in many parts of the world. Yet, the legacy of colonialism and imperialism is not solely one of strife and struggle. There is a profound resilience found within these societies. Despite the hardships endured, many have managed to thrive, redefining themselves outside of the colonial narrative. Furthermore, the shared experience of colonialism has fostered international cooperation. Countries that were once pitted against each other by colonial powers have found common ground in their shared history, leading to alliances and partnerships that transcend geographical boundaries. And let's not forget about the cultural exchange that has enriched our global tapestry. From art, music to cuisine, the influence of colonized societies is seen and celebrated worldwide. As we reflect on the era of colonialism and imperialism, let us recognize the complexities of our world's history. The interweaving of different cultures, the struggle for autonomy, and the enduring impact of past actions all contribute to the world we live in today. But by acknowledging these complexities, we take the first step towards understanding, learning, and building a future that celebrates diversity and equality for all. Together, we can pave a path toward understanding, learning, and building a future that celebrates diversity and equality for all. The era of colonialism and imperialism, marked by the expansion of European powers, has left an indelible mark on our world. It was a time of exploration and exploitation, driven by the desire for wealth, dominance, and cultural assimilation. Yet it also sparked resistance, leading to the birth of nationalist movements and the eventual wave of decolonization. Today, the legacies of this era still resonate, shaping the social, political, and economic structures of many nations. Despite the challenges, stories of resilience and cultural revival abound. As we reflect on this complex history, let us remember the power of understanding and learning from our past. It is through this knowledge that we can strive for a future that truly celebrates diversity and equality. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.